Hello again, everybody. Mr. Pockets here, and I'm not going to show you how to make anything today, anything balloon-wise. I'm going to tell you some jokes, because a lot of people, as you're making them a balloon, won't talk, they'll just watch you. So, and it can be pretty awkward for them and you, so that's when I bring out my jokes. And jokes tend to get a pretty good laugh. Either jokes or magic tricks work. Alrighty, so I'm going to tell you some of my favorites. I think number one has got to be my duck joke, which is a duck walks into a store and asks the clerk, "You got any grapes?" The clerk says no, and ducks aren't allowed in stores, so the duck walks out. Next day, the duck walks back in and says, "You got any grapes?" The clerk says no, and ducks aren't allowed in stores, so the duck walks out. Next day, the duck walks back in and goes, "You got any grapes?" The clerk says no, and if you come back again, I'll staple your feet to the floor. So the duck walks out. Next day, the duck walks back in and says, "You got any staples?" The clerk says no, so the duck says, "Then you got any grapes?" Number two is a kind of short one, and that's why I like it, and it's also kind of gross, but it's what's green and white and goes 100 miles an hour backwards. And when they ask what, you go, do a little sniff. Alrighty. I also like, what would George Washington be doing if he were alive today? And they ask what, and you say, scratching it in the inside of his casket. That one's pretty bad. How about the construction worker one? There's two construction workers and they're building a house. One is sawing wood, and the saw slips and it cuts off his arm. His friend takes the arm, he puts it in a bag, and they go to the doctor. The doctor sews it on, and it's as good as new the next day when the guy is chopping a tree down. The axe slips and it cuts off his leg. His friend takes the leg, puts it in a bag, they go to the doctor sews it back on, and it's as good as new the next day when the guy's using a welding torch. And the torch slips, cuts off his head. His friend takes the head, puts it in a bag, they go to the doctor, and in 5 minutes the doctor comes out and says, "I'm sorry, sir, your friend would have been okay, but some idiot put his head in a bag and he suffocated." Alrighty. There's some newlyweds in the late 1800s riding in a horse-drawn carriage. They've just been married. So the horse stops. The groom gets out, looks the horse in the eye, and he goes, "That's one." He gets back in the carriage, and the horse starts up again. Down the road, the horse stops again. The guy gets out, looks the horse in the eye, and goes, "That's two." Gets back in the carriage, the horse starts up again. And a couple more miles down the road, the horse stops. The guy gets out, goes, "That's three," pulls out a gun and shoots the horse in the head. The bride, obviously horrified, is going, "What? I can't believe what I've just seen. You just shot this animal in the head." And the guy looks her in the eye and goes, "That's one." That one's, it's not a good idea to tell that one to newlyweds. Another construction worker one. These three construction workers are building a high-rise. And every day for lunch, they sit on the very, very, very tip-top little post and eat lunch. So one day, a guy opens his lunchbox, one of them, and he goes, "Oh, it's a hoagie again. My wife always makes me a hoagie." So he says, "If she makes me a hoagie one more time, I'm gonna jump." So the second guy opens his lunchbox and goes, "Ah, it's a salad. My wife always makes me a salad. If she makes me a salad one more time, I'm gonna jump." So the third guy opens his and he goes, "Ah, it's soup. My wife always makes me soup. If she makes me soup one more time, I'm gonna jump." So they tell their wives, and the next day they go up onto the top for lunch. The guy opens his, it's a hoagie, he jumps. Second guy opens his, it's a salad, he jumps. Third guy opens his, it's soup, he jumps. So, at their funerals, the three wives are talking to each other, and the first guy's wife is like, "I didn't take him seriously when he said he'd jump if I made him a hoagie again." The second guy's wife is crying, going, "Oh, I wish I hadn't have made him a salad." And the third guy's wife says, I don't get it. He made his own lunch. Alrighty. There's more. How about one about an airplane? There's an airplane waiting to take off. And all it's waiting for is the pilot and the co-pilot. And pretty soon, these two guys walk up wearing pilot outfits. And they both have dark glasses and seeing eye dogs. And the passengers, thinking it's a joke, start laughing amongst themselves. But the guys walk right up into the plane, into the cockpit, and shut the door. The people are looking at one another. The plane taxis and gets on the runway. And it starts taking off. And the people look out the window. And it's getting closer and closer to the end of the runway. And it's not lifting off. So the people start screaming their heads off. And at the last second, the plane pulls up off the edge and resumes its flight as normal. So the people quiet down. And inside the cockpit, the pilot looks at the co-pilot and he says, you know, Frank, one of these days those people are going to scream late and we're all going to die. Okay, one more joke about a dog. So, a guy walks into a bar and he has a dog. The bartender says, hey buddy, dogs aren't allowed in here. The guy lies and he says, oh, this is my seeing eye dog. The clerk says, oh, well, okay, if it's your seeing eye dog, you can stay with your dog. The first one's on me. So the guy's sitting there, and pretty soon, another guy walks in with a poodle. The first guy takes him aside and says, psst, hey buddy, you gotta tell him it's a seeing eye dog. So the second guy with the poodle says, alright, thanks. And he keeps on walking in with his poodle. The bartender stops him and says, hey buddy, dogs aren't allowed in here. The guy says, oh, this is my seeing eye dog. The clerk says, I don't think so. They don't make seeing eye dog poodles. And the guy thinks for a minute. And he says, what? They gave me a poodle? Alrighty. If I think of any more, I'll tell you later.